McGlynn is in. I repeat, McGlynn is in. Let the fun begin. This is the Commissioner Evaluation Podcast with your host, John McGlynn.
Was that Herms?
He got them guests on the Rolodex, stopping by to talk about some Dynasty Superflex. Everybody, yo, Commish is in. It's time to sit down to listen to John McGlynn. Yo, who we trading, who we fading, who we getting off the squad. Knowledge never overrated, playing for number one. And yo, McGlynn is in. It's time to let the fun begin. It's the Commissioner Evaluation Podcast with John McGlynn.
Welcome to the Commissioner Evaluation Show. I'm John McGlynn. You can find me on X at John McGlynn75. We're halfway through the fantasy football regular season. We're injuries, four-string running backs taking jobs, all kind of mayhem, and everybody seems a mess right now. So let's breeze through some commissioner questions, week 8 injuries, week 9 waiver wire. We'll do a quick team-by-team quick hits, review some trades that went down in Mighty McGlynn home leagues, and finally we'll evaluate a team to see if it's a win now or a sell and rebuild for the future. So, JT, what's new and exciting since our last show?
Just trying to keep these teams alive, man. There's so many injuries, so many players hurt. It's like 36 leagues. I'm just trying to figure out if there's anybody left on the waiver wire for me. Got our 6th win in flag football today. 6-1 is my team, trying to lock up the number 2 seed going into the playoffs next week.
Nice. Very good. Dennis, tell us about yourself, where people can find you on all platforms, and what you do in the fantasy football world that makes people want to follow you.
All right, John, you can see me right there, D-Mike Media on X. I still call it Twitter. Of course, I'm an old-timer, so I call everything by their original names. Teamed up with a guy by the name of Professor John Bush, better known as the Fantasy Professor, when we were both writing and producing content over at the Fake Pigskin. May she rest in peace. And we teamed up and formed a site called Science of Fantasy Football. You can see us there. We're also hooked up with the guys at For Frequency's Sake. We do our Data Lab podcast over there, but do 2 podcasts a week with John here on Science of Fantasy Football. We take a deep dive down into the data. We're both scientists by nature. He's a biology professor and I'm a meteorologist by trade. So looking at things from the scientific method, in other words, you let the statistics answer your questions instead of cherry picking statistics to try to make a point. And my big thing is you got to chase what's important in fantasy football, and that's weekly values. Year-end points are garbage. They're deceiving, they're lazy stats, and they just don't tell the picture that you need to understand in fantasy football. Points per game is a little bit better, but if a guy has 40 points one week, 2 points the next week, 2 points the next week, 2 points the next week, and then blows up for 35, he's on your bench because you don't trust him anymore, but he has got great points per game. So I developed a tool that I call weekly values. I originally call it the Big Ten, but I was afraid that the conference that can't count would sue me if I use that name. So I call it weekly values. Basically, it shows the upside potential of any player by taking their best third of their games. And I believe in using a pretty long statistical data set. Most people only looking at the current year and half a year of data. I look back 2 seasons plus the current season. And by doing that, you have enough data points to make some logical conclusions. I also developed a tool called the MVP Index that looks at the 3 things that you care about most in fantasy football. I'm a big believer in consistency, but then you add in big game potential. When a guy blows up for 50% more than the median at his position, that's a week that could win you your matchup. And then I also look at the guys that threw up the old donut hole for you. Did they give you an awful score? Because you can have a great team lineup in most formats. You have one guy that throws up that donut hole and it can sink you for the week. So the MVP index just looks at those three dynamics. And that is a new thing that I'm beta testing this year. But that's what sets me apart from the others in the fantasy football world. I'm not a fantasy football analyst. I hate that name. I think you have to be appointed an analyst by someone else or the fans. I'm a fantasy football researcher. That's what I do.
That was my next question. What's your favorite thing to do in the fantasy football world?
Play with data, man. It is so cool to try to come up with different ways to see the hints that the fantasy football gods are always giving you a hint on who's going to be the next big thing. If you look at snap counts, for instance, and you watch the snap counts increase for a player, the fantasy football points will follow if the snap count continues to rise. And so I like to look at the data. Yeah, I love playing matchups against people. I love setting the lineup. I love kicking some butt and winning money. But before you win the money, you got to understand the stats. So I love playing with the numbers and trying to come up with new ways to sort of find a way to be better than consensus. Because, John, that's all you have to do in fantasy football to make a lot of money is beat the consensus. You don't have to be perfect.
Yeah, just like I got Jonathan Mingo on my team now because he's running at like 86% snap share, but he's only getting about 4 points a game. So it's going to come in time. I know there's going to be some positive regression, but chasing guys like that is kind of makes me happy.
Yeah, you got to get the guys that have opportunity. And anytime you draft a rookie at wide receiver or running back, even worse for quarterbacks, those guys are a mess. But if you draft a wide receiver or running back as a rookie, don't expect him to do much until about week 6 or later in the season. That's what you're drafting those guys for. If you are drafting a guy and you expect him to do great in the first 5 weeks, yeah, you'll get the rare unicorn rookie that does that. But most rookies, it's a huge jump between college football and the pros. The smaller the college they played at, the bigger the jump is to the pros. I mean, some of these guys that play in the SEC, I think some of the defenses might be worse on Sunday than the guys they played on Saturday. Some of those teams are just absolutely stacked. But rookies, watch those snap counts and watch them earn their way onto the field. And the points will follow. Mingo's a heck of a player. He's got all of the things that you want in a wide receiver in the NFL. It's just a matter if he puts it all together. And if somebody can shoot Adam Thielen, who's having a, great, he found a fountain of youth or something. I love Thielen preseason. He's on more of my single season teams than just about anybody else at wide receiver because they were giving him away. They're just saying, here, have this guy who's a touchdown machine. And, you knew he was going to be good if he could stay healthy. And, he wasn't, over 65 in NFL terms, if he's ready for AARP, but he ain't ready to retire yet. I'll tell you that. He's looking really good, but that's the advantage of having somebody like that on the team for a guy like Mingo. You're learning from the best route runner, and it's just going to help Mingo's development considerably.
JT, how long do you let guys, like, let's say, start with running backs, generally speaking, like, they produce a little faster than wide receivers and tight ends do, but how long do you let a wide receiver sit on your bench for? Like a guy like Sky Moore or a guy like, Rashee Rice, who's having a pretty decent season so far as a rookie, but how long do you let a guy sit around for before you're like, I've had it, How patient are you?
It really depends on when I drafted the guy. If I took a guy early, like late first round, mid second round, I'm going to give that guy a whole lot more time to develop than a guy I took a flyer on at like the end of the 4th round or beginning of the 5th round. Those are maybe a dart throw guy at a smaller school that I'm like, hey, let's see if this guy finds some room. If I'm in leagues that have taxi squads and I can kind of stash those guys, I love to do that. If I'm in a dynasty league that doesn't have a taxi and we start getting to this point in the season and I'm like, oh, I don't even have playable guys, or that guy is not getting any kind of snap share whatsoever, and I need somebody to kind of because of injuries or bye weeks, then those are the guys I'll probably drop early on. I just think the biggest issue we have in fantasy Obviously, redraft, you can drop those guys pretty quickly. Dynasty, you got to give us guys some time. I think, and that's the biggest issue, I think, these days is everybody wants that immediate impact. They want that guy to immediately come out and just be an absolute stud. And it takes these guys some time. And when it does, sometimes people, we've talked about it, John, buying that guy the second year. Everybody wants him as a rookie. And as soon as he doesn't hit, you go out and you get those guys for a lot cheaper the second year when they didn't hit huge. I always think of like a guy like an Alec Pierce for the Colts. A guy was going like high to mid second round. Everybody kind of fell off. You could get him late in dynasty startups this year. I mean, real late. And you can trade for him for, a late third, early fourth from some people that are just over it. So I just think it depends on the guy. And it depends on the situation around him. I think guys, I can see a path to them starting, even if it's not this year, but next year. I want to hold those guys that are just way, 6, 7 guys down the line. And you're like, this guy are all coming back next year. They might lose this guy. Okay, so what does he move up one spot? Those are the guys I'll dump faster if they don't make a move. But the guys I want to hold on to are the guys where the situation is going to change. They might be wide receiver 5 this year, but 2 guys leaving free agency, they have a year playing behind those guys. They might be wide receiver 2 or 3 next year. So I always think it's good to look at those situations because I don't think everybody's the same. But I have a lot of guys from this rookie class that I'm holding, and I'm holding firm this year because I think they're going to rise next year in value, and I think they're going to get a lot more playing time. And I think a lot of people are going to have written them off for dead after they didn't do much their rookie year.
Opportunity. Opportunity is what it is all about, John.
Yeah. If you were going to say like a guy like Roschon Johnson, he's supposed to have the opportunity, he's getting hurt all the time. It's like, man, when does injuries and when does like sharing a backfield and when does all that stuff come to consideration when it's time to move on from a running back? Like, obviously, we're not throwing Roschon Johnson in the garbage right away, but when does it get old after a while? It's like, look for the net or trade him away.
For young players at both wide receiver and running back, with me, almost never. I am very patient. I will wait until middle to late portion of their second year before I start burying them. And then I won't bury them if I've got a veteran hack that is just going downhill fast that I need to get off the roster. Those are the guys that go first. But my roster construction is a lot different than other people. I've started a thing that I call the better than zero philosophy when it comes to drafting running backs. I will take a guy early if he's a great value, but I just don't waste my time on those middling values in the late first and second rounds. And then I line up as many running backs as I can. And I do the same thing in Dynasty. So if you look at one of my Dynasty rosters, I'll have studs at quarterback and tight end almost on every squad. I'm a really big believer in elite quarterbacks and tight ends. Even in one quarterback leagues in Dynasty, I want to have an elite quarterback. Same in redraft. I want an elite quarterback and elite tight end. I'll grab some really solid wide receivers, and then everybody else on my roster is a running back. Because at running back this year, we've seen it. It is the ultimate revolving door at some of these teams, and there's nothing more satisfying than seeing the hottest trending players on my sleeper app. 4 of them, 4 of the top 10 are running backs. 3 of those 4 are on my roster already. Before the before you're doing a big bidding war with your FAAB money, you got them because you got them for $1 or you got them free before anybody saw them. And that's what I'm pretty good at in fantasy football. Every year I lay out looking at the depth chart from a fantasy football perspective. This year in one of my brand new dynasty leagues, it's a 1 quarterback league. We start 3 wide receivers and we have a couple of flex positions. I drafted Puka Nacua in the 19th round and people were like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? This was long before Cooper Kupp got hurt. And my answer was opportunity. There is nobody on this Rams roster other than Cooper Kupp that knows how to play wide receiver. So at the very least, I have the second best wide receiver on the team now. Atwell is okay, but he's not going to be a superstar, when it comes to it being a dominant wide receiver. Hey, when Cup went out, I was even luckier because now I've got the alpha wide receiver, and then I got even luckier because the guy developed into an unbelievable player. But that's the thing that you look for uh, with wide receivers and running backs. Is there a route to you getting on the field? And if there's a route to you getting on the field, that's where I go. But JT's right. Grabbing those first year bust guys is great. I was grabbing as much Nico Collins as I could this year, not because I was this magical ace forecaster that he was going to be great. He was cheap and he was going to get a chance in his second year. And now there's a new coach in that situation. I love that. For first year bombs that now get a new coach, it's like starting all over. But they've already learned how to play in the NFL. But those are the things I look for. It's opportunity, opportunity, opportunity. And I don't give up on my young players. I give up on the guys that are on the downhill slide, the 8-year veterans that, you got them on your roster because, hey, in a pinch, in a bad bye week situation, you can get me 4 or 5 or 6 points. But those are the guys I discard if I need to discard a player because I don't like to keep guys that we already know what they are. It's like Coach Dennis Green always said, they are who we thought they were,
Is that about the hook?
And if he's a 6-point player, he's a 6-point player. We now know what he is. But if you keep that young guy who hasn't hit that peak yet, you don't know what you have. So I ended up with a lot of Kyron Williams on my rosters all over the place in Dynasty because I grabbed him cheap. When people dropped him last year, I threw him on my roster. He was sitting on my taxi squad. And a couple of teams, I was like, oh, shit, I got this guy. I forgot I even had him. But those are the kinds of things. You just grab young players with opportunities, narrow depth charts at a position. They're going to get a shot.
Yep. Yes, sir. All right, tell me about a day away from the desk, content creation, like family, pets, music, hobbies, that kind of stuff. What do you do like when you're not doing any kind of work anymore?
Well, I'm happily married to a beautiful woman named Stacy. And, a few years ago, if you had told me that the words happily and married could go together, I might not believe you. I was vowing to be a lifetime bachelor after I failed my second time at marriage. But we live down here in Danville, Illinois, which is a beautiful little town, downstate Illinois. And I'm the farm director on WITY radio down here. So every day I get to go in and do the noon farm show and talk about soybeans and, nematodes and all this kind of great stuff. We adopted a husky by the name of Ashton, 85 pounds. She was only about 75 pounds when we got her. So she eats a lot of pizza with me. But that's, I love to go hiking out in the woods. I'm an avid photographer. Covered NASCAR, IndyCar, and NHRA and short track racing for about 20 years. So I still love to go and cover a race if I'm so obligated to, if I could find a client to pay me, I'll go and do that as well. But I love taking photography of fast cars, crazy birds in nature, whatever. But I love, there's so much to do down here in Danville. You can, 2 blocks away from here, and I'm out in the country with my camera taking pictures or walking the dog.
Yeah, I'm going deer hunting in far south Illinois in a couple probably next week. I think the 16th to the 19th, I believe it is. So I'll be shooting Bambies out there.
And one more thing I love to do when I get the opportunity every summer, I'm the play-by-play announcer for a pro Frisbee football team. The sport is ultimate disc. And I'm the play-by-play man and have been since 2017, I think, for the Chicago Union.
There you go.
We had a little bit of a lean year last year. And the guys kid me. They say I'm kind of like the Bob Uecker of ultimate announcing. And they don't mean from his Brewers days. They mean from the movie Major League. So I take that as a compliment, but I have a good old fun time. I don't take anything too seriously when I'm calling play-by-play of a crazy game like Frisbee football.
Yeah. What's your favorite food when you're sitting in front of Red Zone on Sunday afternoon?
Well, it's something I invented, John. So it's, of course, my favorite. It's a Mexican burrito. And you're like, what the hell is a Mexican burrito? You take a tortilla, like a burrito, instead of filling it up with Mexican burrito contents, you fill it up with some sauce and some sausage and pepperoni. I'll throw some fresh tomato on there, lots of cheese, and you bake it, you flip it over, you got an Italian burrito. But also love anything, any of the great bar foods here. Get a workout here, whether it's hot wings, whether it's mozzarella sticks, maybe some fresh salsa I made from my garden ingredients. But that's the stuff that we eat now. For these European games in the morning, I make a mean French toast at halftime.
Yeah,
so
buddy.
But no, it's you got to have lots of good eats. Sometimes love to make some nachos, not the Luke nachos where it's just cheese thrown on chips. Real nachos for real men. But any bar food, I'll simulate it here in the D Mike headquarters. But yeah, I'm a Red Zone guy too, man. It just every once in a while, the Chiefs are on. I'm a Chiefs fan, I admit it. But I'm a Chiefs fan that suffered for 50 years between Super Bowls. So I'm not one of these Johnny come lately Mahomes era Chief fans. But if the Chiefs are on, I'll watch that game on network, but switch over to Red Zone at during breaks. But man, I love Red Zone. Love watching that every Sunday.
Hell yeah. All right, let's jump to some commissioner questions here. We got one. First of all, if you have any issues that popped up in your league, tell your commissioner right away, any scoring lineup, whatever, so it can be resolved as soon as possible. Real quick, what's your favorite format to somebody who's done redraft their whole life and simple settings? What would you encourage someone to try in their next fantasy football league?
Anything different. The more different types of leagues that you play in, the more you develop as a fantasy football player. And each format, while it's a little bit different as far as the strategies go, they all teach you a different way to look at the data and look at the rosters. But my favorite is I got invited to a best ball dynasty super flex best ball dynasty league, and I'd never even knew that people played dynasty with best ball format. And it's so much fun because I keep about 3 of my roster spots kind of open where I rotate them every week, and I'll throw in guys that because of injuries they got an opportunity to actually produce. But it's a great format for people just getting into Dynasty because you don't have to worry about setting the lineup. But it has its own unique strategy options to it. And hey, maybe it's my favorite because I swept the championship last year too in that
There you
league.
go.
But it always affects me. But I'll play in anything. I do like dabbling in some IDP leagues, as long as they're not all IDP. If we've got 5 IDP slots, that's okay. I'll take up to 5, but any more than that, I don't enjoy it as much. But I've been learning and teaching myself how to get better at that format. But literally any format under the sun, whether it's redraft, best ball, playing in a guillotine league this year, haven't done one of those before, and I survived 8 weeks without the guillotine falling on me. Even in a league that Aaron St. Dennis started called a Pirate League, where every week you get to protect, if you're the losing team, you get to protect one player, and then you have to accept the trade player for player, position for position, that the winning team owner suggests to you. So you only get to protect one guy, and it's a different level of strategy. And boy, you go on a losing streak, you get into a bad losing streak because the roster starts getting depleted fast. But it's been a lot of fun.
Oof. Yeah, that's I love those kind of leagues. The more weird settings like that. And I'm not a best ball guy yet. I even though it sucks to set in 20 some lineups every Sunday morning, it's
20?
still like
Only 20.
Yeah. JT's in the same boat too. Yeah,
I know I play a ton of it, but I agree. I agree with this. That's why I love football, fantasy football, because it's just all the different leagues you can play. I got into a fantasy best ball dynasty last year for the first time. I never played in a bet. All mine had always been 1 year redraft best ball leagues. So I'm now in 2 of them. One of them is actually IDP as well. So I'm loving it. I'm just loving all the variety. And like Dennis said, I think you could take some from all those different leagues and the strategy of being in redraft and use it in dynasty in some aspects. So I think stuff. And John doesn't play IDP. I'm an IDP guy myself. So John's like, I don't do any of that. So I told him one of these years I'm going to get him on an IDP team with me, but we're still working on that. But yeah, just all the variety is so much fun. The different scoring settings. I just love it because then the strategy is always different. It's not like you're just going through off a sheet of paper and drafting the same guys in order every league, because that wouldn't be any fun if you were just doing that same thing. So I love the variety. That's my favorite part as well.
One of the coolest leagues I was in, guys, years ago, and we kept this league together on Yahoo for about, 10 seasons. It was a keeper league, but you only got to protect 3 players. And it was a very shallow bench league. So you only had 5 guys on your bench. But here's the wrinkle that made it tough. You couldn't make more than 3 waiver or free agent pickups on any given week. And you didn't get to save them up. So use them or lose them every week. But bye weeks, surviving through the bye weeks without having empty spots and without giving up a really good player, because the greatest strategy was, as long as your lineup was set, you were grabbing all the good guys that people had to throw out into the pool.
right.
And you tried to set, you had to plan your bye weeks so you didn't have more than 3 guys off any given week. It was a really fun league to play strategy wise. It was against some really, really good players. And I stumbled across it many, many years ago when the internet was young, because I was asked to write for a fantasy site. It was the original Fantasy Gauntlet back in 1999. And when I joined, they said, yeah, here's what we want you to do. We want you to go and find the worst keeper league team that is looking for a new owner, and we want you to turn that into a winner. I got very lucky, and with my strategy plays, I had 1 good player left on that team, and I made a 2-for-1 deal. Grabbed 2 really good players, made 2 more 2-for-1 deals, and was able to rebuild the roster. Won the championship the first year, going from a team that won 3 games the year before to like 2nd or 3rd in the league, but won the championship. I won 3 years straight, and then I didn't win for the next 7 years.
Yeah.
So it was the luck of fantasy. It's not lucky to get into the playoffs. Okay. The best players get into the playoffs every year in fantasy football, period. You might have 1 really good manager in your league with a good team that got beat because of injuries, but you're going to make the playoffs if you know what the hell you're doing. Once you're down to the final 4, that's when Kamara going off for 4 touchdowns can kill you. If you get a bad matchup in the playoffs, that's where the luck comes in.
Yeah.
But I'm so tired of hearing people talk about how fantasy football is so much luck. No, it's kind of like the World Series of poker. The best poker players are going to do great, but you might get 1 bad beat along the way that knocks you out of the tournament. Same thing happens in fantasy football.
Yep. All right, we got from a fantasy football commissioner, Facebook page. We have a commissioner situation. The scenario was a trade was completed. 15 minutes later, Team A says it was a mistake and a misunderstanding on the league message board. He asked for forgiveness and the trade to be reversed. Is this a problem for the commish? Is this a problem for Team A and Team B? Or should the entire league be involved in the reversal of this trade? So, JT, start with you. Should it be just if the two teams are okay with flipping it back and forth, it should be just them to worry about it, or should the whole league have a say-so?
I ran into this issue in one of my leagues maybe a couple weeks ago. I had a trade. A guy said he messed up, didn't mean to accept the trade, was kind of like half asleep, did it. I messed up. I didn't immediately call the other guy. I figured, oh, dude, if you just did it, it was an accident. Like, I'm sure he will understand, blah, blah, blah. My mistake was I didn't immediately contact the other owner and say, hey, man, he said he screwed up. Is that right? Because he told me, hey, man, I messed up. It wasn't like too long ago. And then the other guy's like, whoa, dude, he accepted that like 6 hours ago. And I'm like, what? He made it sound like it just happened. So first thing I'd always say is make sure you contact both owners, get their side of the story of what happened, and then you can kind of make it work from there. So what I ended up having to do was the guy went back and said, oh, I wanted to trade him, but I just didn't want to trade for what he was going to trade for. I wanted to send a counter offer that was a little bit of a lower draft pick. So he offered one 2 rounds later. I kind of stepped in. He said, hey, man, that's way too late. Like, that's ridiculous. So I ended up negotiating a deal where it was like 1 round earlier than the one guy wanted and 1 round later than the other guy wanted to kind of negotiate it to make it work. But that would be the first thing I would do. Talk to those 2 guys, make sure the story's the same for both of them, and then kind of go, okay, your perfect world, what happens? Your perfect world, what happens? And then as the commission, almost got to be a negotiator. I would not get the rest of the league involved, but that's just me personally. I feel like the commish is who needs to make that decision for the better part of the league. I feel like you get other people involved, it just gets even more complicated. So that was my mistake on that, but that's what I would do. I'd immediately get a hold of the other guy. Hey, was it just 15 minutes? He thought it was this guy or that guy. Okay, who did you think it was? I thought it was this player, or I thought I was doing this. And make sure you get everybody to tell you the whole story so that when you explain to the other guy, you can kind of be the go-between. That's what I would do, and that's what I've done in those situations. And when I haven't done that, it's kind of been on me. And so I felt like I was kind of forced to make a move because I screwed up on my end by not checking with both parties before I reversed the trade. So once I had reversed the trade, I kind of had already stepped in it. So I felt like I had to do as much as I could to fix the situation.
I did it myself in a league of mine. I actually traded. Somebody had Ramondre Stevenson at the beginning of the year, and I was trying to get him, so I traded my early second because it was somebody else's second that was early this year. It was a losing team. I tried to trade that for Ramondre Stevenson. The guy declined it, and a couple minutes later, he sent back a second for Ramondre Stevenson. But I'm going to win now with Ramondre Stevenson. He sent back a late second, and I'm like, I accepted. I thought maybe the guy changed his mind and sent it back. But he sent a second-round pick, and he had Ramondre, and the vice versa on both leagues. So he tricked me. I had to explain it to the league, like, hey, this isn't what I thought. He just sent it back because he overthought it again, but it was at different leagues. So they understood. They're like, yeah, but I had to make sure that the owner was okay with it, first of all. I'm like, listen, man, I can't make you – I can't just, like, force trade this back. You got to be okay, understand that you knew that you did this to me. It was a trick. I thought I accepted it, like, real fast. And he was like, yeah, I don't care. The rest of the league was okay with it too. But they're like, hey, I'm not that forgiving. If you do that shit to me, I'm keeping Patrick Mahomes or I'm keeping whoever they got to happen. But so I got the okay one time, but I'm not going to make that a habit. A lot of people in my leagues wait like 3 or 4 hours before they actually accept the trade for that reason. And I get like real pissed off. Like, come on, man, like just accept the trade. I've seen a couple mistakes over the last couple of years. I should probably be a little more patient myself, but it is what it is. So
I get yelled at sometimes because I'm a guy. Sometimes I want to let it marinate just a little bit, just to make sure that I'm like, okay, let me rethink strategy. Is this the move I want to go in this league? Especially when you're in a bunch of leagues. I'm like, okay, am I rebuild here? Am I middle of the road? Can I make the play? Because I've had some trades. I'm like, I would never make that trade in 99% of my other leagues. But this league, I'm like, I'm bare bones. Everybody else is already tanked. Like maybe I make that trade when I would never do it anywhere else, and the value is terrible, but in this league it works. So sometimes I want to think about it. Sometimes I want to send off a message to a couple other guys I trust. Be like, hey, here's my situation. What are you thinking? What do you think about this trade or whatever? Does it seem right to you? Does it seem too far off? Because I've had some times where though you hit, and I've had times where that's burnt me, where I didn't accept it fast enough, and then a guy pulled it or traded someone else, and I was like, oh, I wanted that deal, and they're like, oh, sorry, man, I went back to accept, and it was gone because he'd already traded the player to somebody else. So that definitely can happen. So you got to be careful both ways. But yes, my thing would be really look through that trade. Really make sure it's what you. So here's the thing too, is what I always do. And I tell people, especially for my fantasy league and stuff, I always go to my team page before I like accept an email trade and just hit okay. Like I always make sure I go to my team page, relook at my roster, relook at my team to make it sure, that's the team I think it is. And I'm not making a deal for a guy. And I'm like, oh, I thought that was the other team that I was competing. This is the team I'm tanking. Why would I make that trade? So like, usually I can keep my team straight, but we all have those brain farts. So that's why sometimes I like to go through. I like to look at it. Okay, let me look at my roster. Let me check the standings. Is this what I thought it was? And then maybe that's why I very rarely immediately hit accept unless it's something I've been back and forth with the guy for a while. And it's like on top of mind because we've really been negotiating for the last hour or two. And then it's like, oh, that's the deal I wanted. Then accept. But I always try to be cautious on that because I always feel like if the other guy just says no and you're a commish, you got to be like, you kind of got to say no. If the one guy in the league just says, hey, man, like I'm not willing to negotiate. I'm not willing to trade it back. He said, he accepted it. That's his bad. So you can't have those situations too. Most of the guys in my leagues, I know personally. So I can usually be like, hey, man, we're friends. Like he's going to get you back another time. I'll make sure he doesn't screw you on something. And so, but if you're in a lot of online leagues where you don't know the guys, you better be careful because they're probably, you're just going to get burnt.
Yep. You agree with that, Dennis?
Oh yeah. That's the best way to handle that. And yeah, JT, I understand the oops, I screwed up deal. I just made a deal a few weeks ago in a league where I looked at, I'm like, man, 2 first-round picks for this guy? Hell yeah, it hits, he couldn't hit except fast enough. Then I noticed the next day they were 2026 first-round picks. I was like, damn it, I might not even live long enough to go ahead and draft these guys. But I let it stand because it was on me. And recently also, in one of my leagues, I went to go, never make a roster decision at 3:00 in the morning when the dog wakes you up. I was out making a roster change, and I'm like, I got to open up a roster space so I can pick up some guys, because I want to pick up multiple guys. And okay, I'm gonna open up another roster spot. So I went to go get rid of Brandon Cooks. Instead, I got rid of JSN. I was like, oh no,
that's one of those I'm like immediately messaging the commissioner. I'm like, oh, I hit on the wrong guy.
Can I hit on the wrong
real quick.
Yeah, so I hit on the wrong guy, and I was like, nobody's ever gonna believe that I hit on the wrong guy. They're gonna just like, oh no. I was like, it's gonna just cause more grief. So I put in a bid for my own player. Didn't get him, but it's the way it works. But yeah, it's here's the thing. If somebody makes a mistake like that, and I've been in that situation where a guy accepted the trade and is like, oh, that's not what I thought it was. I've always reversed it automatically.
Yeah.
I said, no problem. I'll reverse it. Because the worst thing in a dynasty league is now having a reputation that you're a person that they can't trust. Because now you will be frozen out of deals going forward. But I like involving the commissioner and having the commissioner as an unbiased opinion get to the bottom of it, because usually there's his side of the story, my side of the story, and the truth. And the truth doesn't always match with either of our perceptions.
Yep. Well, that's our commissioner question for today. So let's jump to injuries. Quarterback Kirk Cousins, Achilles, season-ending, terrible. Matt Stafford, thumb. He might sit this week. They have a week 10 bye, so we'll see what happens there. Tyrod Taylor, ribs. Seeing as he went to the hospital, it's probably Daniel Jones' job again, and we found out that it probably is Daniel Jones' job. He's back, no restrictions. Kenny Pickett, Steelers, ribs, short recovery time. So they don't play on Thursday. I thought they did. They do play on Thursday, right?
They play on Thursday. So far right now, he's listed as out. The coaching staff is saying they're on the fence. He's telling everyone he's playing.
Yeah.
So he's been telling everyone, the media, everyone he's playing. So we'll see how that works out. But right now, I don't think he's been technically cleared. If you look at like sleeper and everything, he's listed as out. He's not even listed as questionable. So he's saying he's playing, but we'll see what happens there.
Brock Purdy, 49ers concussion, second one in 2 weeks. Sends up red flags. Just something to monitor as far as that goes. Plus, we'll talk about him later too. Deshaun Watson is practicing. Desmond Ridder, Falcons concussion bench, but he could concussion protocol. But he's sat for Heineke now, so his status for his concussion is irrelevant. Running backs, Jonathan Taylor, Colts. Zach Moss is doing just fine if they need to sit Jonathan Taylor, but until he's 100%, it is what it is. Wide receiver Kendrick Bourne, 20 ACL. Devonta Parker, concussion. Deontay Johnson, possible hammy. Again, Curtis Samuel, Commanders, toe. We'll see what happens with that. Drake London, groin strain, monitor that. DeAndre Hopkins, probably just a rest day. They said something about, his being sick today or being whatever, but it's probably just a rest day. Darren Waller, Giants, hamstring. He's saying he might be out for a couple of weeks. So any other injuries besides the ones I talked about that you guys saw today or that I didn't catch?
Those were the main ones. I saw something Waller said that like he did not seem optimistic that he was going to be back in the next couple of weeks. He was the clip I saw, he looked like he was pretty down and felt like he was going to be out a while. So I would not be expecting him at all over the next 2 or 3 weeks.
I use this to trade Bellinger away in a couple of leagues right now to get him while he's hot. I like Daniel Bellinger, but I don't think he's, anything near what Darren Waller is. So, it is what it is. Sometimes you got to sell high on, the news, stuff like that from players, but it is what it is. Waiver wire for this week.
Hopefully,
Dennis, did you have one?
Yeah, well, hopefully they can get Watson up on the massage table and he'll be back,
Ba-dum-bum.
There you go.
I couldn't
get him going.
Waiver wire for week 9. Quarterback, Sam Howell, Commanders. This is what we were hoping for out of Eric Bieniemy's offense. Hopefully this continues. Then Will Levis, Titans. Ryan Tannehill probably lost his job, but don't expect this kind of performance on a regular basis from Will Levis, but go get him if he's out there. Aiden O'Connell, Jimmy G's bench. They should have done this a couple weeks ago. Any other quarterbacks you guys to think of?
Well, what's going to happen with Baker Mayfield's injuries is my concern, and who is the backup for Tampa Bay? Is he?
Yeah.
I don't know. And that's why I say I'm just kind of wondering what will happen, and will Rippon play for Stafford? If that's the case, I mean, that's what I guess would have to happen. I don't know where Stetson Bennett is in his recovery from injury right now, but those are the concerns I had, and I'm hoping that Trubisky plays. He's my only quarterback option in a 16-team league where I lost Cousins.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that was a guy. I've got a couple 2 QB leagues that I'm struggling. I'm not sure I'm going to have a second QB. I'm like, who's the guy that's most likely to get hurt? And what backup can I put in just in case he gets some PT?
It's lean, man. It's lean out there trying to grab some of these guys.
I'm also surprised a little bit while we're talking about QBs. How you've have guys that are in the building all year, and then the starter gets hurt. And then the backup's sitting there, and these teams are like looking to sign someone else or bring him in. Why is that guy the backup? If you didn't like him, if you liked him that little, why is he your backup? That's one thing that blows my mind. I mean, the Vikings, Cousins goes out. And of course, he has missed very few games in his career. He's been a stud. You got Jaron Hall there. You had Nick Mullins. You had all kinds of other guys that you moved on from. you assume because you like Jaron Hall, the rookie. And then you turn around and you immediately chase for Josh Dobbs, which, I mean, I got to say, I love Josh Dobbs. The guy was a Steeler forever, was a great backup QB. I just am shocked that all of a sudden, all these teams think that Dobbs signed out of nowhere is their best option over the guy who's been there the whole year. It really, it just blows my mind. I'm like, again, it's not like Josh Dobbs was a 10-year starter in the NFL who took a seat, started to become a second or third string back, and the guy just knows the NFL, put him in. I know the guy's smart. I know he knows the NFL, but it's like he has had more starts in the last 2 years than his entire career combined. It's crazy to me. I'm just shocked by this. It just blows my mind what these teams are doing with their QBs.
And the Vikings, I thought they were going to get Jameis Winston.
We all thought that.
I'm saying if you're going to go out and trade for somebody, how is no one making a move for Jameis? We're all signing these guys off practice squads. We're trading for How can Josh Dobbs get traded for this many times in 2 years and Jameis Winston is just sitting there as the backup QB? It just blows my mind. I can't believe that no one made a move for him.
And the Rams were going to make a move for Wolford from Tampa. He was sitting on their practice squad. So Tampa signed Wolford to their active roster. Now they're carrying 3 quarterbacks on the active roster again. Will Wolford be the guy who starts?
And Wolford was the backup for the Rams, and he wasn't even good when he played for the Rams last year.
I'm like,
so you like Wolford that much more than Rippon, who you kept and let Wolford go? These personnel decisions lately, just especially QB, just have me baffled what these teams are thinking.
I just made a couple plays for Kyler Murray. Figured that maybe Minnesota was going to make a play for Kyler Murray because Kirk Cousins' contract's up at the end of this year. So I was like, yeah, maybe they're going to go for it now. Just he's locked up for a couple of years. They got they got to do it, but that didn't happen. So now I'm stuck with Kyler Murray everywhere. So, but anyway, running backs, Zach Charbonnet, Seahawks. He's on a committee until injury, so pick him up now because he's still cheap. If something was ever to happen, to Kenneth Walker, Charbonnet's a steal. Lombardi, Lenny, Bills, chew up some early down stuff, pass blocking, some out of the backfield stuff. This will hurt James Cook a bit. Amari DiMercato, possible last week of action before James Conner returns, but these guys are probably already on most rosters. So but if they're out there, grab them. Wide receiver Khalil Shakir. Bill saw an uptick of usage due to Knox being suddenly shelved. Would be nice if they use Shakir this way going forward. This offense worked this way. I'm not sure why the Bills wouldn't stick with it, but Demario Douglas, Patriots, with Bourne out and the rest of the receivers trash. Douglas might be the main guy going forward. Hopefully he is. Raheed Shaheed, who I passed up a handful of trades for earlier this year, and I kind of regret it now, but Michael Thomas is possible future replacement. Quentin Johnson, Chargers. I've got rid of this guy on all my teams, but he's a first-year guy, so he will have a fifth-year option. But he was forced to play due to Josh Palmer's temporary knee situation during the game on Monday night or Sunday night versus the Bears. He looked very uncomfortable catching the ball. The lights still might be a little too bright for him, but just because he's a first-round pick, he's going to get the opportunity, so he's worth the pickup too. Tight ends, Trey McBride, Cardinals. McBride is getting all love due to the Ertz injury, but hopefully he could he could prove that he belongs here. Ertz is still signed long-term, but some cuttable money on his contract. So who knows what happens there. Did I miss anybody, you guys, on running backs, wide receivers, or tight ends?
I think the main guys coming back. For anybody who's still holding on to Juju Smith-Schuster like I am in a million leagues, he supposedly is back. So the concussion, he's supposedly coming back. I didn't know how much a look he was going to get, but now with all the other injuries, it's basically him and Douglas as the two wide receivers. So I would be expecting, if you're in a deep league, I definitely would not tell you to start him in any kind of, if you're in a deep 14 or 16 team league where you start 12 guys, he's a possible throw in one of those flex spots. And I know I'm in a couple leagues like that. I'm probably playing Juju this week, but just aware that he is supposed to be back. And will he do anything? I have no idea, but he should see snaps.
He's a guy that needs to be force-fed to be successful. He's not a guy that's going to be, just a blowout guy or anything. He needs to be a big part of the offense to make himself look good. But
he lost a step. Yep. Clearly last year, and I think he lost 2 more steps this year. One guy that I'm interested in, and I know, I usually don't chase points, but, Jamison Crowder has been a guy who in the past, when he's been getting snaps, has been okay in those deep, deep leagues. And he now gets a chance because I think Samuel's going to miss a week or two. And yeah, Dotson is the guy, but the third guy now is Jamison Crowder. So if he gets some snaps, he has an uncanny way of finding open spots, especially when you got better talent that is commanding better coverage, guys. So he's a guy that I'm looking at as a really cheap pickup during this bye week in particular.
Very good. That's a good. I like deep stashes. Okay, so what happens here? We're going to switch to the NFL news and rumors, which is my version of quick hits. We're going to switch off. Dennis will take the odds. JT will take the evens. We're going to spend about 15-second answers here, guys. We like to talk on this show a lot, and I like talking, but we're already at 50 minutes, and we haven't got to the intro yet, so we got 15 seconds. Let's go. 15 seconds per team. Here we go. Dennis, Bears. Why do the Bears, Dennis, why do the Bears hate second-round picks? 15 seconds.
Oh, man. Ryan Poles is a brilliant talent evaluator, but he might have been he might be a classic example of the Peter principle. He might have been promoted to his level of incompetence.
Yeah. JT, Bengals. Andre Losavis is going to be a star next year if they lose T. Higgins and Boyd, correct?
He is the guy I got deep in every draft. He was a dude. If Puka wasn't there, I was taking him, and I took him 100% for the reason that he was going to be a stash, that he was going to shot next year. So I have him. If he's still sitting out there and you've got roster spots, pick him up, stash him. Taxi squads usually can't put him on there once the season's going, but if you got a spot and you got injuries and just got extra spots in your roster, pick him up, put him there. He's going to get a shot. The guy's got insane upside, ton of talent, and just being around all those other good wide receivers, I think is just going to continue to make him better.
I had him in like every league, and one by one, I'm like having to drop him because of some situations, and I'm like, shit, I just hope nobody picks him up. In a couple of leagues, he got picked up, but every time I get a chance, somebody gets hurt. If I had an IR spot, I get him back in my roster as soon as possible, but sometimes you got to make those tough decisions. Dennis, Bills, are you buying Leonard Fournette or Khalil Shakir if you have a roster spot? Which one of the two?
Buying Fournette for sure. He's going to be a better Latavius Murray. So he's going to get opportunities in the red zone. And the other thing he's going to get, he is a really good blocking back for passing downs. If they don't blitz, what does that guy do? He goes out in the flat. So he's going to be able to get some good targets. I'm on Fournette for sure.
Yeah. JT, Broncos. Did Javonte Williams carry the ball 27 times out of necessity, or are we going to expect this kind of crazy usage going forward?
I think it was necessity. I think they were trying to run the clock as much as possible. They wanted to keep the Chiefs off the field. Yep. I would be shocked if that's not a season high by maybe 5 carries. I would not expect him to get more than 20 in a game the rest of the year.
Yeah. Dennis, Browns. Deshaun Watson is practicing. Do you think the game is too fast for him right now, or is he going to pull it all together and or get hit and run the sidelines act again?
He is really, really looking bad, man. I'm telling you, sometimes these guys age a lot faster than their chronological age, and I think sitting out all that time really changed what we can expect from Deshaun Watson.
Yeah. JT, Buccaneers. I know the O-line is bad, but are the running backs bad too, or just the O-line?
I think the O-line's the biggest issue. We talked about that slightly earlier with the stashes. Sean Tucker is my stash for next year. I know I talked about him all year, loving him. I think he's the guy's going to get a lot more run next year, even if it's a new coaching staff. The O-line's just bad. They're trying to give Rachaad White. They wanted him to win the job. I don't think he's really done it. I think you're going to go into next year with an open competition for the running back spot. That's why I'm grabbing Sean Tucker. I just wrote an article on DLF about it. I'm trading a late third, early fourth round next year for him. I just think he's got ability, and I think it's going to come out next year.
Yeah, Rashad White's getting like 7 receptions a game. I traded him away because I out of necessity in some league, and I'm like, God damn it, this guy's getting 28 points a week now because of this stupid receiver. Everybody knew
I
that
think Rashad White's going to look way better as a third down back. I just really do. I just don't think he's built to be an every down back. He never was that in college. I just think he is the third down guy. I think they shift to Sean Tucker as their first second down back. I think Rashad White becomes third down / 2-minute warning. 2-minute offense guy. I think they switch to that, especially if they get a new coaching staff next season.
I in a dynasty tight end premium league, I traded him away to get Michael Mayer as a long-term asset, and I'm like, it's so tough just watching. And I'm not like huge stacked at running backs, but I have plenty of running back depth. Yeah, but man, it was tough getting rid of Rashad White right now when he's getting 7 receptions a game, over 20 points but him, and he had some up and down weeks. He's got 4 or 5 points a game, and then all of a sudden he's got 22 points the next week, and shit like that. So I don't feel so bad. I just have to, weather the storm this year and kind of let it kick me in the ass when I play against him. But I just feel like he's not the long-term answer, so it had to be done. Dennis, Cardinals, is this the best 1-7 team you've ever seen?
I think, John, that sometimes us fantasy football aholics look at a team from the viewpoint of fantasy football, and there is such a big difference between guys that are good scorers in fantasy football and good players in the real NFL. I think that's the biggest problem with the Cardinals is they've got a lot of talent that we love on our fantasy teams, but boy, I just don't know if that's real good NFL talent as far as winning games.
Yeah, they're so close in all these games, though. That's what it's like, they just barely lose these games, and it's like, man, how they play everybody so tight all the time is ridiculous, but it is what it is. JT Chargers, did Quentin Johnson weasel his way onto the field first in the starting lineup now?
I'm still Josh Palmer over him if he's healthy. Josh Palmer is a guy I was grabbing everywhere the last 3 weeks with the injuries and stuff. I think Quentin Johnson's going to get some playing time. We all knew it was going to take some time. He didn't play in a polished offense at TCU. He didn't do a lot of routes. I mean, he was running deep and just short routes, and that was it, like one or the other. And so we knew it was going to take some time. I think he's got a good offense. I think he's going to grow. I just don't think we're going to see his peak for at least another year and a half, maybe 2. I just think he's going to take some more time to learn. He's going to get some more PT just out of necessity. But if guys come back from injury, I'd much rather, for this moment, not long-term dynasty, but for this moment, I'd rather have Josh Palmer over Quentin Johnston.
Yeah, absolutely. Tongue-in-cheek question here, Dennis, but how come Jordan can have the flu and score career highs, but Mahomes chokes?
Taylor Swift wasn't there. Come on. My Chiefs have 2 losses this year, John. They're perfect. They have a perfect record with Taylor Swift there. Now, here's the thing. I called this that I was a little worried about this game on the Science of Fantasy Football podcast, and it had to do with one factor that a lot of people don't think about. It was the first cold weather game of the season, and you saw how the receivers reacted. The receivers had 3 more drops, and they were easy drops that would have been big plays for the Chiefs. But they'll shake it off. Taylor will be there. She's got to be there. Come on, come to Germany, Taylor. We need you.
She could fire a private jet there. Did you see that Sky Moore just drop that breadbasket drop right in the back of the end zone? I'm like, come on, man. You got to catch those, dude.
Sky Moore, hands of stone. They need to move on from insisting that he plays so many snaps. The Chiefs do this every year, though, John. They play every wide receiver they've got, and they look at them all. And then after their bye week, you notice the snap counts go up for the guys that are more dependable. In this case, this year, that's Rashee Rice. He's going to be living on that field along with MVS, who does a lot of real NFL football things that help a team win. But Rashee Rice is going to be a monster in the second half of the season.
Yep. JT, Colts, you were at the game. What happened?
Oh, Colts are they're in every game. It is turnovers at the worst times in their own end zone and bad penalties that get them absolutely when they have a nice play or they're setting up for like a 3rd and short on a huge play. They get penalties. They get a hole of some big plays. I mean, obviously the Rasheed Rice touchdown was gigantic. I mean, it could have been a pick, ends up being a touchdown. They've just been right in the mix. This Colts team's better than people give them credit for, especially they are playing with their cornerbacks. Oh my God, they're just piecemealing it together. They've just got injuries everywhere. They're playing with young guys. I mean, they're on like their 5th, 6th string cornerbacks right now. It's bad. And teams are just taking advantage, as you see with the passing yards the last couple of weeks against them. I don't think this team is bad as their record is. And, you know, the Saints are a sneaky team. It seems like right when you count them out, that's when they put it together and you're like, oh, that's who the Saints are. And then they'll turn around and you're like, oh, picking the Saints, betting on the Saints, and then they just lay a goose egg. It's week to week from them. It's crazy. I think they're, you know, a better team than people are giving them credit for. I really think they end up winning the South. But you know, like I said, it's turnovers for the Colts. It's just turnovers. If Minshew could get rid of the turnovers, he has actually played very, very well in this backup QB role.
Yeah. Dennis, Cowboys. People were saying to sell CeeDee Lamb last week. He's a top 5 dynasty asset for me. Would you sell CeeDee Lamb for two mid-24 first, just because CeeDee Lamb went from like 25, 26 to 27% around that area target share to like 19 for a week or two? They're like, get rid of this guy, get rid of this guy. If somebody offered you 2 mid-24 first, would you take him for CeeDee Lamb?
Oh, that's tempting. It would depend on where my team was. I like CD Lamb. I had him actually as my WR5 this year with my weekly values forecast. He hasn't quite lived up to that yet, although that big game certainly was a help. But 2 first-round picks, especially in this upcoming draft, where I think some of the elite talent might sneak down a few spots. And also, you're always never sure if it's going to be a mid to 24 pick. That team could get hot or really tank. You know, it's hard to sometimes read from the midway point of the season where those picks are going to be. But yeah, I'd be tempted if I was okay at wide receiver and I was not contending this year. I would probably hoard some draft picks, not because I don't believe in CeeDee Lamb. I'm just not totally sold that the Cowboys coaching staff knows what they're doing. They seem to go from one extreme to the other with the game plan, and I'm not sure that bodes well for CeeDee Lamb always being an elite wide receiver going forward.
Yeah. JT, Dolphins. When Devin A-Chain comes back, how will he fit in this offense now when everybody's healthy?
I think they can still fit him in. I think he's going to get playing time. And when we saw how explosive he is, now is he going to give you the insane elite production that he gave you right away out of the bat this year? I don't think so. I think he's going to be really good, but just if you expect that he's going to come back and bam, he's getting you 35, 40 points a week, I would not expect that at all. But I do think they're going to work him in. They've obviously shown that. Mozart, they want to keep him healthy as long as they can. They're expecting a long run in the playoffs. Just got Jeff Wilson back. They're going to kind of, ease him in. So I just don't think they're going to get crazy with any of these guys. I think they're going to give them all playing time and try to keep, hopefully, since they've all been hurt this year, try to keep most of them healthy come playoff time. So he'll fit back in, but you're not going to see anything crazy where he's getting 20 touches a game or anything like that.
Yeah. Dennis, Eagles. Is there a better receiver combo than A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith? I know that in Miami and I know that in Cincinnati they have good receivers, but are these the two best receivers?
Well, there's certainly two guys that are probably for real football might be the best combination because they're so different from one another. Whereas Waddle and Tyreek Hill are basically both the same guy. Okay. Different speeds, maybe. Waddle, really fast, but Hill at this unbelievable rate. Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown complement each other so well because they're such different wide receivers. And I think that makes that package the best, especially when you combine it with Dallas Goedert. My God, that's a threesome that really, really is that's tough for a defense to cover.
And running backs out of the backfield that are pretty good too. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
It's a pretty damn good team. Yep.
Yep.
JT Falcons. Why didn't they trade for a quarterback like James or Tannehill or somebody? It's turning in instead of turning to Taylor Heineke. Was that the right move for their playoff hopes?
I mean, Heineke, I think you can do a lot worse than Heineke as your backup. I mean, he kept a Commanders team that was not very good in a lot of games last year. I mean, he's going to make some mistakes. He's one of those guys. He's kind of like a Gardner Minshew. The guy's got talent, but he's only got so much talent. I'm really shocked they didn't go after Jameis in the offseason. I felt like Atlanta seemed like that would be a real good spot for him. I think they now feel the pressure where they're like, we can win this division because it's so bad, and we just got to do enough. And I feel like whenever that happens, these coaches start going veteran. They just start thinking veteran. Oh, I got to go with the veteran. The veteran gives us a better shot. And so I think that's where they're going with Heineke now. I think they could go a lot worse than Heineke, honestly. I didn't think Ritter was that bad the last 3 or 4 games, especially for a young guy. But I can see him making the change. It's the same reason Commanders did it last year. They thought they had a shot to win, and they went to Heineke instead of Howell because they thought, hey, maybe we could sneak in the playoffs. And coaches will always defer to the veteran. That's just the way they are. They just can't help themselves.
Yeah, Dennis, 49ers. Is Debo that important to this offense, or does either league figured Purdy out?
I don't think they figured Purdy out. I think the bigger loss is Trent Williams at tackle. Ever since he's been less than 100%, even the one game he played in but was hurt, that offensive line did not look the same. So I don't think it's so much Purdy. I don't think it's so much losing Debo. I think it's the offensive line not getting the job done like they were earlier. They're still doing fine, popping some holes for CMC, but they're just not protecting Purdy like they were early in the season.
There you go.
And I don't think Purdy is an elite quarterback. Okay. He's a good, not great quarterback, but that's all that team really needs when the defense is playing good and when the offensive line is playing good. And lately the offensive line is not pass protect and the defense is getting shredded.
Me and Jay keep drooling, waiting for
Sam Darnold. We're waiting for Darnold. I told you, I said this last week. Everyone sat out an entire week if they've had any kind of concussion symptoms. I said, if Purdy comes back and he gets any kind of symptoms again, you're going to see it. It's going to almost be mandatory. What happened? He was the only guy that rushed back. He's the only guy that started 1 week later this entire year in the NFL. And what happens? Concussion symptoms again. I'm telling you, they're going to make this a mandatory 1 week sit out. If you have I don't care if you pass protocol. I think the NFL is going to start making this a 1 week automatic sit out because of the Tua situation last year. And now when Purdy is the first guy that doesn't sit out a week and he immediately gets a concussion the very next game, I think you're going to see it. And you're just going to have to expect anyone who gets a concussion is out a week from now on.
Yeah. And guys, here's an obscure rule that I'm going to bring in for you. Australian Football League, Aussie Rules Football, they switched this year to a 10-day mandatory concussion protocol. You couldn't clear concussion protocol for 10 days. That guaranteed that the player was going to miss a game, so it actually guaranteed at least 17 days before you'd see him out on that field again. And it worked wonders. They had fewer returning concussion protocol players. And that sport's a lot more vicious than the NFL.
Yeah, so no helmets, no nothing, just straight running right into each other.
Yeah, and can't wait to play AFL fantasy football next spring. But that's a whole another story. But I think you are going to see a mandatory concussion protocol because, this is 2 years in a row they've let guys sneak by and they haven't they've suffered a second concussion way too fast.
Yeah. JT Giants. Daniel Jones says he's ready to return. Is that a good thing?
No, but I don't think it matters. I think the Giants are terrible this year. They lucked out on the schedule. Dable coached his ass off last year, and this team was able to get some wins they probably shouldn't have, and they're getting exposed this year. They just are. Daniel Jones isn't that good. This whole team isn't that good. They tried at wide receiver. Waller was supposed to be the answer. He's had nothing but injuries, and this wide receiver core, they cannot get these guys the ball whatsoever. I don't think it makes a difference. I just think this Giants team is bad.
I don't know why they didn't get rid of Zeke before the trade deadline. I mean, that's our only hope. And if he gets hurt again, like there's nothing left on this team, man. It's bare bones in the pantry. So, Dennis, Jaguars, how do you get Ezra Cleveland for a 6th round pick and the Bears, who desperately need offensive lineman and draft picks in tandem, pay a second for defensive end in a rebuild? How does that happen?
Because edge rushers are like the rock stars of the defense, whereas the offensive linemen are still the slugs, man. They get away with being traded for peanuts. And, that was a gift from Jacksonville. Quite frankly, I think it's tougher to play offensive line and switch from one system to the next in the middle of a season. And I think teams realize that. Whereas, man, it's like just hang up some fresh meat for those guys that go as edge rushers. You can get into that defense pretty fast because your job is just to go kill the quarterback. So I think that's the biggest problem with offensive linemen is it's tougher to switch systems in the middle of a season. But boy, that was a gift.
6th round pick.
That was cheap.
I mean, the Bears could at least
Absolute steal.
The Bears could at least sniffed around there and said, "Hey, you got anybody? Anybody got any offensive linemen?" And I mean, man, unbelievable. Anyway, JT Jets. Zach Wilson is barely keeping his Jets team afloat. Can he and the Jets defense hold down the fort until Aaron Rodgers comes back, or am I asking too much?
Is this 2022 all over again? I feel like we're in the exact same situation. Zach Wilson with a stellar defense, keeping him in games and just doing barely enough to win. This team is going to go down the wire again. The question is, the AFC is so tough. Are they going to get enough wins to get into the playoffs? This defense is tough. I don't want to play guys against the Jets ever this season if I don't have to, because I mean they are just shutting people down. And again, if your defense is playing that well and you have Zach Wilson, he doesn't have to make every play. He's not out there trying to put up 350 yards a game and 4 touches, because all he's got to do is just not turn the ball over and win 10-7 games, 13-10 games. And he's talented enough to do that. Now, I still am not a believer that Rodgers gets back this year off that Achilles. I mean, I've had Achilles tendonitis for like the last 2 weeks, and I can barely freaking walk half the time. I don't know how a guy can play NFL with a repaired Achilles tendon and go out there and move around fast enough and plant on a foot and throw. It would be a shocker to me if Aaron Rodgers gets back. I know he wants to, but I don't know if this kind of feels like a fairy tale to me for the Jets that he's going to get back.
Rodgers is quite the mobile quarterback too. He does a lot of shifting and running. He's like Fred Astaire in the back. He doesn't so much run, but
he doesn't run a lot, but he moves a lot. He shifts, he stands, he adjusts his feet and his weight when he throws. It's a huge difference when you can't plant on a foot like that. And again, he's not super fast, but he knows how to move and get out and run. And if you just can't move because you can't plant, it's a huge issue. And I mean, I would be really worried that I would mess that up again that quickly. I mean, Achilles are no joke injuries. If you're not a pro athlete, you tear your Achilles. I mean, you're looking at 3-4 months on crutches, like legit, like not walking around, not hanging out the office. Like you're on crutches. Like it's a big injury.
Yeah. He was standing on a field throwing a football a week ago. I'm like, this guy, he's just asking for trouble, but whatever.
It blows my mind.
Yeah. Dennis, Lions. Donovan Peoples-Jones is just a pre-playoff roster depth stash, or is he a real threat to Jameson Williams, or just kind of a Marvin Harrison or a Marvin Jones replacement?
Yeah, he's a Marvin Jones replacement. They haven't been very happy with the Khalif Raymond experiment. When he's had to play, he's been awful. I think he's just another guy that can sort of be a deep threat and open up the middle of that field for Laporta and the Sun God. I think it was a good move because they got him cheap, and he knows how to play in the NFL. He knows how to run a route. He knows how to go deep. He's got decent hands. I was really shocked that he wasn't being played more by the Browns this year after last season, where he did offer them something in the real football variety. It was never anybody I wanted on my fantasy squad, still isn't. But in real football, having somebody that can actually be a deep threat and loosen up that offense, especially if they want to run more, especially if they want to hit Laporta and the Sun God over the middle where they're strong. That was a good move. But, yeah, I don't know if it's so much Jamison Williams downer, but it is just a Marvin Jones replacement.
I'm a huge Donovan Peoples-Jones fan. I think at some point in time he is going to break out, one of those late breakout kind of guys. But, it's got to come soon or it ain't going to happen. But I get it. But I love Donovan Peoples-Jones.
He was one of my favorite, the last couple of years, one of my favorite 21st round in a best ball league kind of pick. He is like, yeah, why not? The guy can actually catch a ball deep. And the problem is Cleveland doesn't throw the ball deep, but yeah, Detroit does.
Yeah, buddy. JT, Packers GM Brian Gutekunst is not sure if Jordan Love is the future of the franchise. Do you think he's played well enough to earn a job next year or at least one more year?
I mean, I don't know if he's played well enough to earn the job, but again, you got to give a guy a chance to play for a year. I mean, I just don't understand how you're halfway through his first season as starter and you've already made a decision. This guy has no way to be the franchise QB. He's terrible. I mean, it's like these guys haven't looked at history at all. I mean, Peyton Manning, Troy Aikman, some of these guys, their first years look terrible. Their second years look terrible. When you look at the stats, you got to give a team to grow. And it's not like he's got world beaters around him on offense. So it's not like, oh, he's the missing link. I mean, their offense is not very good. So, I mean, after you've waited this much time, you spent that high of a draft pick on him, you finally get rid of Aaron Rodgers. I don't know how you don't immediately go into next year with him as your starter. I just don't see how you don't do it. And if you don't, again, what is the better option? What is your option? What rookie QB are you going to get that you all of a sudden think is going to be better than Jordan Love? What veteran are you going to sign to that bad offense and think all of a sudden you're a playoff team? I just think these teams are not looking legitimately at their offense, their whole unit, and what they have. This Packers is in rebuild mode. I know they don't want to admit it. They just are. They're in rebuild mode. They need to just build with Jordan Love. Give them a couple years. If in 3 years Jordan Love still hasn't proven it to you and you've given him the weapons, then you maybe move on. But moving on after 8 games into his first year as a starter seems insanity to me.
He's sat on the bench for a couple years, though, too. That's the only problem. You have to make a decision now.
But that's what the thing is. Like, I think you got to give him the time. And if you're not, okay. But again, what are your better options? I just think sometimes these guys think the option is just cut a guy, go get who else you getting? Were you going to trade for Josh Dobbs? Is that your answer? We're going to trade for Josh Dobbs all of a sudden? Like everybody, I mean, what are you doing? I don't think Jordan Love's the answer. I don't like him very much as a player. I've never been on a Jordan Love, but I'm like, you've already made your bet with the Packers. At this point, you got to stick with it and see if it works or not.
Yeah. Dennis, Panthers. We talked about this earlier. Jonathan Mingo has over 86% snap share in almost every game, minus the one game he got hurt. Why isn't he producing?
Just hasn't been the guy to target. When you got a guy like Thielen on the team who's such a commander of targets, and you got a rookie quarterback that tends to get sort of one-lookitis. The rookies, they're really successful if that first read is open. And Thielen is doing a pretty good job at getting open as that first read. I think that's been the biggest problem for Mingo is he's on the field, so that's a good first step. But the next step is having the quarterback mature to the point where he's looking for the open receiver, not just the first receiver. I think that is the problem. And that has been the problem of Alabama quarterbacks because, quite frankly, their first look was open in college. So it's a case where in the NFL, I don't care how good that wide receiver is, that first look isn't always open. And right now, the first look is Thielen.
Yeah. JT, Patriots, do they trust Emmanuel Douglas to be the wide receiver one now?
I don't know if they trust him, but I don't think they have any other options at this point. I mean, they better just start running 2-3 tight ends and hoping Douglas and Juju has a resurgence because, man, this offense is looking tough. Hunter Henry and Gesicki might be the two best players on this team. They might start looking for those guys a little bit more, which is not saying a lot. This offense is getting real ugly for New England. It already was very iffy coming into the season, and it's looking worse now.
Jalen Reagor to the moon. Oh, no.
There you go. I totally forgot they just signed him too, but yeah.
Dennis, Raiders. Why didn't they trade Devontae Adams if they were going to give out few fortune cookies to fire the head coach?
Oh,
is that real? Does that really happen?
I don't know, but nothing would surprise me with the Raiders. It just is the weirdest thing, because one of the rumors that I heard is that they went to him at the coach and said, well, you're going to give Devontae Adams 15 targets a game, right? And he was like, well, not if there's better options on the offense, and that was it. This is the inmates running the asylum, though, right? Because I don't know how you can go from we're all in, we're supporting this concept of Derek Carr shuffling you out, and we're going to start somebody else at the end of the season. I don't know how you go that to what they're doing. But I'll tell you one thing, that general manager deserved to be fired. Anybody who signed Jimmy Garoppolo to a contract that was longer than 3 games, it needs their head examined. So, you can be a New England guy from that coaching tree. No, Jimmy G wasn't the answer in New England, and he wasn't the answer for the Raiders. That is a mess. But as a Chiefs fan, I'm kind of happy to see the Raiders as a giant mess.
Yeah.
I'm just glad they're going to play O'Connell. I said the other day, as soon as they said that they were going to play Brian Hoyer in that game, I was like, you got to fire this coaching staff. I mean, if you've seen Brian Hoyer play once in the last 7 or 8 years, and guys are professional, but like he has not looked good in 7 or 8 years in any start he's had. Why would you not give O'Connell the shot? And the second they said, we're going to play Hoyer, I was like, I get rid of this coaching staff. I mean, it's a terrible coaching decision to not give O'Connell a start. He had already played in the game. He had looked solid for what the pieces he has around him. But man, Jimmy G looked terrible the other night. He missed Devontae Adams wide open, and he wasn't even close to Devontae Adams on a number of those throws. I could see why he was so mad on the sidelines. I mean, those throws weren't even close. He had one. He was, 7, 8, 9 yards past the guy, and Jimmy threw it 7 yards out of bounds. Like, man, at least throw it in bounds and let him have a chance to run it down. It was ugly. I'm just glad to go O'Connell the rest of the year. Let him play it out. See what the rookies got.
Watching Devontae Adams watch the ball come down and land out of bounds was like you could just see the frustration on his face. Give him a chance, that kind of shit.
Just burning guys wide open and then what happened to Jacoby Myers? He was like, Jimmy G's been peppering him all year, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, Jacoby's still on the team? Wait, is he out there? What number is he? It's like he didn't throw to him the whole game. I was like, what is happening? That was a nightmare. That was a nightmare game for the Raiders. I'm not surprised they got fired, but something went down weird there because the fact that it didn't not come out till that late on Halloween night is really sketchy. that it was that long before the firing happened and it came out. Something weird happened there for sure.
Maybe the coach's kids TP Davis's house. I don't know.
I saw some stupid report. It's probably a complete fabrication, but he said that like he tried to dress up as Mark Davis and do like this whole shindig. But I'm sure that's probably completely fabricated and made up. But hey, I wouldn't put anything past McDaniel. All I saw today on Colts Twitter was, "Thank God we didn't get this guy. Thank God we didn't get this guy," when he ended up bailing on the Colts a couple years ago.
Yep. JT Rams. What are the Rams going forward without Matthew Stafford? What are the Rams going forward without Matthew Stafford under center? Like what?
I think they're going to be real
without
bad.
a solid quarterback. What are they?
Yeah, without Stafford playing the way he's been, because he's been rejuvenated this year. He has looked like the old Matthew Stafford that we knew, the old number one pick guy, slinging it, getting everybody involved. Without him and with the running game even more injured with Kyron Williams and everything else, I mean, I love Cooper Kupp. I love, Puka's been great, but without Stafford, this team, I think, is going to be really bad because they've been playing above their heads so far this year. It's really been Stafford carrying the load for them and getting just enough out of a really not very talented defense outside of a handful of players. If Stafford ends up being out for a decent amount of time, while it crushes quite a few of my fantasy teams where I waited to take QB this year, I think the Rams are in trouble if it's a long-term injury or anything like kind of like last year where it just like stuck around, and eventually they're like, he can't play injured. I think they're in trouble then if that happens.
Big trouble. Dennis, Ravens, why didn't they just spend a third-round pick and get Derrick Henry on board?
Was it really going to be a third-round pick?
That's probably was.
Did they have enough money under the cap to be able to not have to make any radical changes? Because a couple weeks ago, Henry refused to sort of reposition his money, so he was a pretty big cap hit. I'm kind of wondering if that kept teams away more than anything else.
All right. Fair enough. JT Saints, do you think they are just holding Jameis Winston hostage or what? What the hell wouldn't they try? Why the hell wouldn't they trade him?
Something is going on there. It's crazy. I don't know if it's like Jameis is like, he's like that younger kid on the team who's like the freshman QB. And he's like, oh, I don't think I'm ready to play against the varsity yet. It's like I can't tell if he just doesn't want to start or like what is going on, but it blows my mind that this dude has not had another shot. It really blows my. I mean, I couldn't believe when they went out and got Derek Carr last year. I was like, oh, here we go, Jameis time. Oh no, we're gonna trade for Derek Carr. What are we doing? This is one of the most, with how bad the QB situation in the NFL is right now. This is the most perplexing scenario I can think of. How is the one guy that probably everyone considers probably the best backup QB in the league as far as starter potential, and he's the one guy that no one can get their hands on for anything? The Saints are just going to hold him forever. I feel like he's like a guy in your dynasty manager league. He's like, he's got him, and he's just like, oh no, I'm first place. I'm never going to trade him to you. I don't want you to have a shot at him. Like, it's like, I'm never going to play him, but I don't want you to have a chance to play him. Like, that's what I feel like the Saints are doing. It blows my mind. And maybe Jameis is like, cool, man, I'm over the spotlight. I'll take the money. I have a pretty solid backup QB contract. And maybe he's good with it. But, man, I'm surprised his people were not pushing hard to get him traded to get a shot at starting again.
He must be married like the GM's like daughter or niece or something like that. Hey, we'll give you $9 million a year to sit on a bench and just stay here and do nothing because I know you're not going to make it anywhere else.
It's something because I'm like, look at how many times you hear from players' agents and complaints and like, whatever. We haven't heard a single word from Jameis or his agents in 2 years.
He's making decent money as a backup, though.
They didn't say anything. He's making good money, but that's what I'm saying. Maybe Jameis is like, yeah, dude, I'm good with that. I'm good being the backup. I'll just take my money. No pressure. I don't have to start every week and have everybody talking crap about me if I play bad. I don't know, man. Maybe that's the situation because it just seems like I'm very shocked that this situation has lasted as long as it has. And that at this point, it looks like Jameis is going to be a backup for the Saints for the rest of time until he's out of the league. I mean, it's nuts.
I'm going to reword this question because I wrote it kind of when I was pissed at Pete Carroll, like I always am. So I'm going to say Seahawks. Charbonneau is a better all-around back than Ken Walker. Which running back would you want long-term, Charbonnet or Ken Walker?
How about neither right now, long-term? I just think that we're in a perpetual shared running back situation in Seattle. I do. I just think the two players both do one thing better than the other, but they don't do the other thing as great as the other guy does. KW3 is pretty good at pounding the ball right up the middle, right, between the guards, just wear the other team's defense down a little bit. He's really good at that. Whereas, Charb is obviously the better guy in the passing game. You get him outside the tackles and he's dangerous. Inside, he can still get the job done. He would be, if you didn't have KW3, he'd certainly be a 3-down back. But I just don't think Pete Carroll trusts rookies. He likes to play the veterans over a rookie who is better. And KW3 had that same problem last year until everybody else got hurt, basically. But yeah, it's an interesting situation. But right now, and I've got some of both guys in Dynasty because while I see it as a perpetual timeshare, I'm also of the support of a concept that I call play them both. We're seeing a evolving of NFL running back usage. If you look at the median number of touches per week, it's going down because these timeshares are becoming more and more the reality. So why not own both parts of the running back situation? Worked pretty good for me this year so far with Monty and Gibbs in Detroit. And I think it might work pretty good with KW3 and Charb in Seattle going forward.
Yeah. JT, your boy Steelers. Would you rather have big play Pickens or a separation King Johnson on your team?
Not looking at team scoring fantasy wise, I'm a Pickens guy. Not that I don't like Deontay, but man, just watching the last couple of years has been frustrating. Even when he's produced, he just makes a lot of plays where he catches the ball, he runs backwards, he misses you first downs that he had. Everybody talks about the no touchdowns last year. He should have had like 4 or 5 where he didn't get his foot in, and that was not on the QB. So personally, for me, I'd rather have I think Pickens is just hitting that, that breakout potential. I know everybody complains about the separation. Oh, he's never burning guys, but man, he just makes plays, and the guy has hands. He makes the contested catches, and if you're in any kind of big play league, I want the guy that's getting constant 35, 40-yard catches, long touchdowns. I'd rather have him. Obviously, in a higher PPR, Deontay's always going to be that guy that's going to see more targets on a regular share than Pickens, because Pickens just is not going to run a lot of short routes. He's not running those 2-yard garbage Matt Canada screen routes that Deontay runs. Like, Pickens just doesn't run those, so he's just not going to get a lot of those ridiculous catches. Not like they would throw it to Pickens anyway, because they got to figure out whoever's wide receiver 5 on the roster, and they have to throw it to wide receiver 5 because that's what they do. But I'm a Pickens guy. I just think he has more upside. No slight on Deontay, but I'd rather have Pickens. I just think he's got a bigger ceiling, and he's a big play potential guy. I'd rather have Pickens.
Yeah, Dennis, Texans. CJ Stroud started out so hot. Who put the ice on his progress? What put the ice on his progress?
Having tape on him in the NFL. That's all it is.
Yep.
Here's the way it goes. A rookie quarterback can start strong like CJ Stroud did. And he was just a really competent NFL quarterback. And that's rare as a rookie. But you get film on a guy, and all of a sudden teams spot, a good defensive coordinator will spot that one thing that you might be able to exploit. I haven't really figured out what they're exploiting, but they did. And I think then the next thing for a rookie to do is make that adjustment. Now we'll get to see if he's going to be a solid NFL quarterback or a great NFL quarterback, because the greats make that second adjustment to what the defense started doing to them.
Good answer. Good answer. JT Titans. Let me hear how much you hate Will Levis now.
All right. I knew this question was going to come up. Now, a lot of rookie QBs could look awesome throwing deep to DeAndre Hopkins, just making plays for him all game. If you look at the stats, 4 touchdowns, impressive. My boy Kenny Pickett doesn't have 4 touchdowns a game. So I'll give it to Will Levis. He's got a big arm, which we knew coming out was his strength. The big arm, the deep ball was his strength. Our team's going to adjust to it. Like Dennis just said, absolutely they are. And here's the issue for me. If you look at the passing percentage, you look at the breakdown of the plays, Will Levis had a below par game. Now, he got held up by the deep touchdowns. My issue for him and what I said coming out is, will the guy make some highlight huge plays for you? Yes. Will he get you a lot of turnovers and lose you games eventually? Yes. So while he had that monster first game, I'd be very, very nervous going forward with him, as the turnovers are going to come because he proved it in college. He had a lot of balls he threw behind guys. They luckily just fell to the ground. Now he gets the Steelers on a short week because they have some of the worst corners in the league right now outside of Porter Jr., who's looked fantastic, but they refuse to play full time. But Levi Wallace, if Levi Wallace is matched up on DeAndre Hopkins, he's going to go for 10 for 250 and 3 more touchdowns, because Levi Wallace has been absolutely horrendous this year. And so that's where they're going to burn him. If I'm the Tennessee Titans, I'm going after Levi Wallace all day, all night long. And hopefully, I'm saying they're going to put him on DeAndre. I'll give it to Will Levis. Great first game, 4 touchdowns. Look, hit Hopkins. I would do the same thing. Throw to my stud wide receiver. I don't think we're going to see that again from Will Levis. I could be completely wrong. I thought it was the power of the Houston Oilers, old school jerseys coming through. I knew something was going to happen when I saw those unis, because those things are some of the best out there. It's going to be an ugly game Thursday night against the Steelers. I'm calling it right now. Will Levis, 3 turnovers.
Yeah, it's gonna be bad. I'm looking at Treylon Burks right now, so that's kind of the guy I'm targeting, figuring that Hopkins gonna be double covered. So,
and I like Burks. Again, Burks is one of those guys we talk about. He's gonna be a buy because everybody wanted him high. He was one of those guys that went to a college that didn't run a lot of route trees. They used him where they could just to get the ball in his hands. They weren't like, hey, do this special thing to get open. They're like, hey, let's run 50 guys in front of him and just hand him the ball off. And that's because he was the superior athlete. I think Treylon Burks is going to get better. And it's just one of those guys, he just needs time. He needs time, and people just wanted him to be great right away. He just wasn't going to be one of those guys, especially in a Titans offensive system.
Yeah, I get it. Dennis, Vikings. The Vikings seemingly couldn't wait to move on from Kirk Cousins, but now that he's gone, is the new quarterback just a placeholder, or are they going to – or no more Captain Kirk? Or they're going to try to do a 1-year contract again next year? What do you think?
Yeah, I think they're going to move on from Cousins. But again, who are they going to move on to is the big question. I thought that's why it made sense to grab a Jameis Winston. Have a half a year preview to see if he can get the job done. And then bring in a young player, but have Jameis there to take the load if he can't do it. I don't know. I just see Cousins is going somewhere else. I don't think they're going to sign him longer term. Now the injury might change all of that, because now do we suddenly see the market for Cousins depressed, that nobody wants to get him? And if that's the case, let's say Rodgers not only doesn't come back this season, but Rodgers all of a sudden magically decides, I'm done with the NFL. Do the Jets then go and try to find another veteran quarterback after the rookie experience has not treated him well? But yeah, I just don't see Cousins back next year. I think they will try to rebuild around a rookie quarterback, but do they get one? That's the question right now.
Yeah. JT, last team. Why the hell is my guy Antonio Gibson still a Commander?
Ron Rivera sent me a text message and said, I hate John McGlynn, and I refuse to trade Antonio Gibson just because of that. He is literally just coming after you. He's like, I won't trade this guy. Just because he loves him, I won't trade him.
It's so aggravating. Well, there's a whole bunch of trades in my dynasty leagues right now, but we're at like an hour and 50 minutes, so an hour and 40 minutes. You guys want to run through those real fast? Just get to the team, or what do you want to do?
Go trade real quick. We'll say yes or no. Which one we like?
All right, I'll do the quick. All right, so in Brainiacs, Clayton Tune and a 25 third for Darrell Henderson, Zach Evans, and Will Levis. This is before the Will Levis breakout game, I guess you can call it.
Oh, just for Henderson, I like that side.
Yeah, after the Will Levis game, you got to go to Henderson's side just because of that. You know me, I love Clayton Tune. I just have a bad feeling if he does start, it's going to be a one and done, and Kyler's going to come in. The Levis side with Darrell Henderson for me.
In the Bavaro League, Alvin Kamara and Khalil Shakir for a late 24 first. They got a good team, 24 first and a fifth.
I'm probably going the late 24 first and a fifth unless I'm competing. If I'm competing, I'll take the Kamara side because I need it, but I'd probably take the first and the fifth. I don't know how much Kamara has left, and who knows with Shakir.
I'd take the Kamara side because he's just a PPR god when it comes to running back. And I'm not, I kind of devalue late first picks anyway. If it's something in the first half of the first round, then I get excited about it. Otherwise, I'll take the shot at the player because I want to earn the points now.
Yeah. Rashid Shaheed or a 24 second, presumably late.
She's blown up lately, but man, I like my seconds. I feel like I always draft well in the second round. But again, if I had Shaheed on a team that wasn't going anywhere, I'd absolutely dump him for a second. If I needed Shaheed, I was like, hey man, I really need a flex play, like bad over these next couple of weeks. I could see making that move for a second. I think the second's a little more value, but I can see making that move.
Yeah, I would hope I was better off at wide receiver that I couldn't get Shaheed off my bench. So I'd probably take the draft pick.
312 Dynasty Gurus. Demario Douglas for Gerald Everett in a tight end premium. It's 0.75 tight end premium.
I like Everett probably slightly in that with a tight end premium, but if you need wideouts and you're like getting rid of the old guy and you're like, hey, I'm going young and looking at the wide receiver situation for the Patriots, there's a chance Douglas ends up being one of their top two guys for the next couple of years. I could see going the Douglas side, especially if I'm on a team that's trying to get younger.
I can't see Douglas being the top choice at wide receiver for more than the last half of this year. But Everett's been banged up and missing time and been hard to keep him on the field. So that's an interesting trade both ways. But I just don't see Douglas as having the talent to be a top wide receiver for more than 8 more games.
Babies and Boomers League. Jalen Hyatt for Justice Hill and Taylor Scott from the Bears.
I'm not much of a Hyatt guy, honestly. I feel like he's got more value there than Hill and Scott combined. But Scott has a chance that he's in the mix next year for the Bears if some things change. Justice Hill, so hard to trust him with that running back room. It's like, okay, he looks good occasionally, but it's like you can't count on it. I'm probably leaning Hyatt, even though I don't even like Hyatt. I think he's got more upside.
Hyatt's got the opportunity because everybody else on the Giants absolutely sucks. And he will be around there.
How bad Paris Campbell is.
Oh,
I actually thought Paris Campbell was good. I thought that was a great move for him. I'm like, he's going to have a real shot with the Giants this year to be like they're 1 or 2. And it's like he has absolutely disappeared.
He can't even stay on the field.
It's crazy. It blows my mind.
He's been so bad he's not even getting snaps.
Yeah, he's not even in the. Yeah, he's not even getting snaps anymore. It really surprised me.
Yeah, me too.
All right. So one team is probably somewhere in the middle. they accepted Antonio Gibson and Daniel Bellinger, and they traded away Jonathan Mingo to a rebuild team.
I'll probably go Mingo there. I'll probably go Mingo there for me. I just think Mingo has a higher upside. Gibson, who knows if they're ever going to get a decent spot. I like Bellinger personally. Obviously, he's stuck behind Waller right now. I think he could be a solid guy in a two tight end premium league. But for me, it's Mingo here for sure.
I wouldn't give up Mingo for that package. I'd want a little bit more.
All right, 10-team Superflex PPR. Jared Goff and Will Levis for Kyler Murray and Rashad Bateman. It's a 10-team Superflex.
If I'm competing, I'm probably going to take the Goff side because I'm guessing I need QB help. One of my guys got hurt, and if I'm competing, I would take Goff for this year. For future, man, Rashad Bateman just is like a terrible player for me. I just have never been believed in him, and he has done nothing to change that for me. But I do like Kyler Murray. I'm not a Levis guy. For the future, I'd rather have Murray over Goff and Levis. But that one's a toughie.
I'd rather have the Goff side of this. Then I got a guy I can stream at home. Big home away splits for Goff. It's been crazy.
Huge.
But I'm out on Bateman. I can't see him developing from where he is now. There's nothing keeping him off the field except for the lack of ability.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's the guy that I liked him at Minnesota. And as soon as he went to the Ravens, it never felt like it was a good fit for me. And then when things just went south right away, I was like, this is just a guy I'm avoiding at all costs. And he's one of those guys I hate to give up on guys early, but man, he feels like a guy that's like at the very end of his opportunity. He really does. He feels like he's one of those guys getting cut and be on practice squads for the next 5 years. And everybody's going to be like, oh, maybe this is the time. No, I think he might be done.
He fell in one dynasty league and I grabbed him, not because I was high on him, but because I couldn't believe how far he was falling in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
And all it turns out is that I was playing with some really smart players.
Yeah.
I did the same thing. I took him late in I took him late in a redraft league. And I took him late in a dynasty startup because he was so late. He was just so late. I was like, it's worth taking a shot. And you're right. I was like, oh, that was a waste of a pick. I'm like, damn it.
All right, a 14-team tight end premium. Kyle Pitts or the package of Jonathan Mingo, David Njoku, 224 seconds and 224 fifths. 224 seconds and 225 seconds. So 4 second-round picks, David Njoku and Jonathan Mingo for Kyle Pitts.
I am not a huge Pitts guy. I think he's going to be – I think he's decent, but to me, he feels like more like tight end 7 or 8 than he does tight end 1 to 3. I guess it depends on your draft skills and what you think. I love the idea of 2 seconds, both rounds with me getting my seconds. So it gives me 6 seconds in 2 years. Give me a chance to move up. I like Mingo. And for me, I'm not even a Njoku fan at this point. I feel like Njoku is like just a half step down from Pitts. I'm taking the package side for me, even though I know Pitts should be the value, but I just don't know if I believe anymore.
I'm taking the picks because, just like JT, the crazy thing is I do better with second round picks than I do late firsts. Late first, I seem to stub my toe. The second round, I'm like, I'm just getting lucky or really am discerning that talent a little bit better. And the idea of having 3 second round picks for the next 2 seasons would be just great. I'm always asking for another second round pick as an add-on in almost every trade I do because it's nice having those seconds.
Let me throw this little scenario at you real quick. Think about this in a 10 or 12 team league. You had all those seconds this year. You could have gotten easily Sam Laporta, Mingo, probably a Rashee Rice. And if you wanted to go another tight end to cover your Laporta pick, you probably could have went like a Musgrave.
Yep.
All in the second round.
Or Jaden Reed.
Yep.
Or Jaden Reed.
Yep.
You're telling me you wouldn't take Laporta, Jaden Reed, and Rice or Mingo? And that's just those guys. No Joku. Those guys for Pitts? I think I might. So I said there's a lot of second round talent, especially in this upcoming class. I'm going to try to get as many second rounds as possible. So while I still think Pitts is a talent, I just don't know, especially on Atlanta, if he's ever going to be that top 3 guy that we want him to be at tight end. I want these picks, man. I'm going to get 2 picks the next 2 years plus my own pick, 6 second round picks in the next 2 years. I love that. It just gives you so much options, so much movement for trade and to move up or move down in drafts.
I had 3 in one of my dynasty leagues this year, and that's exactly what I did. I actually got Dalton Kincaid as the 2-1, and then I backed that up with the 2-2 with Laporta, and then late in that second I got Rashee Rice, and man, that was just like stealing at that point.
Yeah, that's home run. I did the same thing in a league, and I think I got Kincaid at the 110. Yeah. And then I turned around and I got Rashee Rice, Reed, and Laporta all in the second round.
Yeah, the second round is it is crazy how valuable you can get players in that round, especially if you have multiple shots at it. Then you only have to hit, you hit 2 out of those 3, you're golden.
Great. Yep, absolutely. Yep.
I thought Kincaid was going to be like the CEH of tight ends, just somebody who got drafted too high, landed on a good team, wasn't really, he's probably like the 5th or 6th tight end that was ranked, kind of thing like that. I had no idea he was going to be like, I knew he was a good pass catcher. I knew he had great hands. I knew he was a decent route runner and an okay blocker, but I didn't think that he was going to be, he looks pretty damn good. So I'll take the L on that one, I guess. So, all right. So real fast, we're going to do, you guys, we got to do this like quick. All right. So every week we do an evaluate. We evaluate a McGlynn home league team to decide if it's a simple remodel or a full scale rebuild. These are 12-team, 30-man deep rosters, no kickers, no defenses. Super flex, 5 for touchdown, 2 for interception, full point for running back and wide receiver, PPR. This is 1.75 per tight end premium. And what's the biggest needs of this team? When you look at this team, what direction do you want to go? This is Sean Roach's team from the Brainiacs League. Actually, it's a 1.5 PPR, not 1.75. Sorry. For tight ends. This team is not going to win its division. We have 4 divisions in this league. So you have 4 division winners, and then the last 2 playoff spots are the high point scorer. We probably will not get a wild card because he's not the 2 last division winners. He doesn't have the most points right now as far as where his situation's at. So right now it's a losers bracket team playing for the 213 pick is a shit bowl prize winner. That's what you get for winning the toilet bowl. You get pick 213. Is this a start selling team or just keep trucking because it has no 24 picks? It went all in for broke this year. The team is 3-5. Is number 6 the least? The number 6 least. He's number 7 in points, and which eliminates him from the playoffs. No picks in 2024, like I said. And when you look at this team, who are you trading for? What can you do here? And if you're selling anything, what are you selling? Are you selling everything? I showed you guys this team. I brought it up earlier. Oh, let me put it on the screen here. So I brought it up earlier. And of course my internet's acting up now. I don't know why my kids must be all on the Wi-Fi and shit right now. So
John, I'll go real quick. This is a team that is a compete team. The problem is you can see it with the guys he has. Injuries have definitely hurt him. Eckler injury, Stevenson off the slow start. Jones has been hurt. He's been banged up. Obviously, Daniel Jones and Aaron Jones. Freiermuth hurt. That hurts. I actually think he's got a nice team here. This is a solid team that if this team was all healthy, I think it's a competing team. I mean, he would take some luck to win. But again, like we talked about, you got to get into the playoffs and let the playoffs go from there and just make it in. I feel like this team is a playoff team. Issue is he's sitting at 3-5 because of the injuries. Depending on what I look at my schedule and see who I have scheduled the rest of the way and kind of see where I think I can score points. This is a tough rebuild or total breakdown. Oh man, I just don't know who. Madison you can maybe trade, but most people are out on him. I don't know if you could get much value for him. And then the other question, if you're going to totally break down, the guys you're trying to trade are maybe Eckler, Stevenson. The biggest problem for me on this team, if you do try to trade and get out, it feels like almost all the guys on his roster are at like absolute bottom floor basement price right now because a lot of them have been hurt. They haven't been playing well. So I almost feel like I would sit with this team just because I'd hate to just start tugging these guys off for nothing. Now, maybe in the offseason, he turns around and some teams see some needs. You make a huge move there. You start making moves. But, man, it'd be so tough right now to try to move Stevenson, Eckler, all these guys when they're not playing well. Higbee has been a little down lately, I know, because I got him on a million teams. Aaron Jones hasn't been playing because he's been hurt. This feels like a team in the middle for me. If they're healthy and playing well, this team could make the playoffs and compete, but it just isn't happening.
The middle is the worst place to be. Let's go like real fast. Lamar Jackson, Austin Eckler, Ramondre Stevenson. There's 2 running backs. Terry McLaurin, Jacoby Myers, and Michael Thomas is starting wide receivers. Higbee, Aaron Jones, Tyler Boyd, and his quarterback 2 is Daniel Jones right now as his roster set up. And he's got Jameis Winston, Jared Goff, Aiden O'Connell, Josh Dobbs. So he's got a bunch of starting quarterbacks in here. No top tier talent, but a handful of starters. Then Cooper Rush also, Jake Browning. And then he's got Jamal Williams, Kareem Hunt, Jalen Warren, Rashad Penny, Alexander Madison, Jaleel McLaughlin, who's been impressive, but no stud. Selvin Ahmed, just in rotation. Laviska Shenault, Paris Campbell, MVS. Christian Kirk is a solid piece, but he's going to bye this week. Brandon Cooks, who I thought was going to have a much better year than he's having this year, but I traded for him in a couple spots. Mr. 1,000 everywhere he goes, but he's having a bad year this year. Jawan Jennings and then Alec Ogletree from tight end from Indianapolis. On his injury reserve, he's got Zach Ertz, Zach Ertz is hurt. Pat Freiermuth. Those 2 right there are a big blow to your roster when you have 2 good tight ends in a tight end premium league that are not scoring. Brandon Johnson, Justin Shorter, who are nobody. And like I said, this next pick's not until 2025 first. So with this team, what do you do? Because I guess unless you have your own first, the kind of rule of thumb is just not trade your picks away or go for it until you can't anymore. But man, what do you do here? What do you think, Dennis?
I'd blow this team up because it is going to be a middling team for a while. And, this is the classic example of what happens when you go for that all in and you really kill all your draft picks in the next year. You just have no chance to get healthy again. So the guy that I would trade is Lamar Jackson. I know he's your best quarterback by far, but I blow it up, man. Lamar is hot right now. People want him. And he is the most inconsistent of that just below elite quarterbacks. When I look at his MVP index, which is my statistical tool, 75 is a great number for a quarterback. He's a 46. And the problem is this: he has almost as many bad games as he has great games, and his consistency really is bad for an elite quarterback.
Absolutely.
But his perception and trade value is really strong. So I blow this team up by trading Lamar Jackson. Eckler's healthy now. So down the stretch, he's going to give somebody a great running back. And I would try to get a few first-round draft picks out of Lamar and Eckler and start going younger, because he lacks an elite quarterback, because I think Lamar is that next tier. He's not quite elite. My group of elite is Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, maybe Justin Herbert when he's healthy. Those are my 4 that I want. After that, I don't care who I have at quarterback, because the drop-off between 5th and 10th is not all that great. And Jackson's in that 5th for me. So I would blow it up, because I think you can get more for Jackson. You can get something good for Eckler. I try to get younger and draft picks. Never, ever trade one guy for one draft pick. You're just shuffling the chairs on the Titanic before it goes down. You're going to stay middling forever. Get a 2 or 3 for 1. and you can rebuild faster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm in the I hate to be in the middle on all my teams. I either want to win or I want to start rebuilding. And it's actually been fun rebuilding the last couple of years with some of the teams I took. So, and I don't think, but like also, so all you got to do is make the playoffs. And then you can get lucky. Yeah, even if you don't get a bye in the first round. So all you got to do is win 3 games, get lucky in a couple of weeks, and all of a sudden you get another ring on your finger. So it's kind of that. It's, man, this is, I guess I wait.
That's why I said, I would look at my schedule. Am I playing like 3 or 4 of the top teams the next 4 or 5 weeks? And I have a chance, like, I'm probably going to lose those games. Or I'm in a league right now. I just looked at my schedule. I was like, man, I wonder where I'm at. Because I was like, I'm like kind of like high end, middle of the road. And I'm playing the 5 bottom teams in the league the next 5 weeks. And I'm like, ooh, I was like, if I house these, which like at least 4 of those teams are absolutely tanking. Like they got nobody. I mean, I would have to my team would have to die. Everyone on my team would have to die for me to lose because they literally have just like they barely have startable teams. So I'm like, I'm going to get at least 3 or 4 of those. I'm like, oh, I'm going to be in the playoffs for sure. And so then I'm like, okay, I'm like, all it takes, and I've got a couple high end guys. I got like a Mahomes, a Kelsey. So I'm like, ooh, if those guys have a big game, I could upset in the playoffs. So that's where this team is. I think you got a Kirk, you got a McLaren, you got Lamar. My thing is I'd set up a bunch of trades like Dennis said, and I'd make sure I clear everybody because one guy's going to F you. Like if you turn around and just trade Lamar, dude, that's going to do nothing for you. You got to make sure you have someone to take Eckler, someone to take one of those other guys off your hands. Like if you can set up like 3 or 4 moves, I can say, okay, yeah, bam, tank it right now. If not, this team is just getting healthy at the right time. Lamar's good enough. Goff is good enough. McLaren, Kirk, hopefully Jacoby Myers, who's been great so far this year, is good enough. And Eckler comes back, man, you can sneak into the playoffs. So that's where I'm looking at for this guy. He's just got to look at that lineup and think, do I got a shot to make the playoffs? If I do, maybe I stick with it, knowing, though, that if I stick with it, I'm probably putting myself in a worse position next year to try to get rid of these guys. You just got to weigh that. What would you rather do? Take a shot at the playoffs and maybe win it? Or do you say, hey, man, I'd rather just start rebuild right now?
And John, one of the things that I love to do when I have a team that's in this situation where they're not quite in the playoffs yet, but could make a run, is instead of looking at the points scored, I like to look at the total points that were possible to score. And if you are looking at that and all of a sudden I'm in the top 6, maybe I'm 8th in actual points scored, but I'm top 6 in potential points scored. And I just made lousy roster decisions on a week-to-week basis. That's when I will hang in there for one more week. And JT's right. This is an all or nothing deal because you're not gonna make one small trade and help this team because you don't have any of your own picks next year. This is either a ride and die for the next 2 seasons or a break it down right now when everybody is in need of something right now. I would look at the Cousins and Stafford owners of the world and say, hey, you need Lamar Jackson for a playoff run and get a premium. You don't want to just shuffle for a value that looked good on KTC. You know, you want to get a 2 or a 3 for 1 and start rebuilding. Even if that 3 for 1 is a couple of seconds or a second and a third to go with that first round pick and a player. Always get a player back. Get something back as far as a young player goes, and you might hit on somebody. So look for a struggling first-year guy and look for a bunch of picks, and you'll be surprised because Lamar is a hot commodity. And as long as you're not asking for 3 firsts in a player, you know, if you were asking for a first, a second, and a third next year and a player who's not doing well, I think you'd get somebody to bite, and that would let you rebuild your team in a hurry. But JT's right also, though. Don't stop at just one guy. If you're going to do a rebuild, do a rebuild. If you're going to suck, man. Just don't be middle of the road. That's the worst place to be in fantasy, is that 8th or 7th or 8th position just out of the playoffs. You don't have a chance of the money, and you don't have a chance for getting better the next year.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks a lot, guys. Dennis, let everybody know where they can find you at, all that kind of stuff like that, and all the awesome stuff you do on the Twitter and all the rest of the bean market and everything else like that.
Well, look me up on D-Mike Media on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it nowadays, until it goes away. And that's where you can find me and everywhere that I'm hanging out. Head over to the scienceoffantasyfootball.com, though. Check out all of the professor's high-tech data. You will be surprised with what this guy is doing, breaking down efficiency data for teams. And if you need to find out about nematodes for your soybeans, head over to wityradio.com.
JT, tell them where they can find you.
Find me. I'm the same way. I always call it Twitter instead of X. At JT Orange. Find me on there. You hit me up every Tuesday night on the Devi Show on FantasyProsFootball.com. Hitting those guys up. They also do a Thursday show that lately I've been working and I've been able to do, but always a Thursday show. Also check out The Stew with JT Brew. I got a bunch of guest people on there. I do college football gambling, NFL gambling. I also do a hockey show now, which I'm going to jump on and do as soon as I get off here. So if you're into hockey, check out that. It's called NHL Around the Ice with me and Brian Toast Clark. So check us out there on my Twitter page and YouTube. And then if you like IDP, I do rankings on DLF, and I write a waiver wire article every Wednesday on Fantrax.
Yes, if you have a fantasy football league or a fantasy hockey league or a NASCAR league or a basketball league or a baseball league or anything, try Fantrax. It's customizable. Me and JT got a hockey league on there. It's that I didn't do very well against JT with the opening week, but I'm trying this week. Made a couple moves so far, but it's great place to draft. Great place to have a league on. So give Fantrax a try if you are looking for a new league. If you're not happy with Sleeper, if you're not happy with ESPN, Yahoo, and Illustrated, all the sports are on Fantrax. Give it a try. At least give it a chance anyway. You can find me on Twitter at John McGlynn75. I'm here. I just joined Fantasy and Frames this morning too. Kind of just going to do some real quick content for them. A couple quick hits, every week, and then that's about it, man. So thanks for watching the show, and I will talk to you guys later. Thanks for watching the show, and thanks for being part of the Commissioner Evaluation Show with us. Have a good day, everyone.